Good evening and welcome to Chat UTD. As I said yesterday, we're going to cover quite a bit tonight. We're going to look at the appointment of Rúben Amorim, do a preview of the Chelsea game, and I'm going to give a short analysis on the tenure of Erik ten Hag. And by quirk of timing or fate, it so happens that it's been made official that Rúben Amorim is the head coach of Man United as of this afternoon. That was officially announced. He will start on the 11th of November, which is a week on Monday. So we've got 3 games pretty much in a week under Ruud van Nistelrooy. Then it's the international break, and during that international break, Rúben Amorim will come in and take the reins. It's probably decent timing, really, because it means that he can at least get his foot under the table and assess things, although of course the players will all be away, but at least he'll be able to sort of acclimatise to the club a little bit. In that time they'll probably do more press-based stuff, there'll probably be proper official unveilings and things like that, and he can get a little flavour of what the club's about, I suppose, in that time, and he gets a little bit of time, even if it's with his staff, to sort of prepare for when the players do get back. And the first game, of course, is against Ipswich away. It's a 2.5-year deal, which was muted yesterday or the day before. I'm quite happy with that. I think football's moved on. We don't need to be giving managers 4 or 5-year contracts in order for them to go through this long-winded process of trying to establish their way of playing. We have now at United what's called the game model, which is a set of principles which runs throughout the club, or certainly what we're trying to establish is the game model, a set of principles that run throughout the club, style of play, your DNA almost, really, which I'm going to come back to a little bit later, and that's set by the director of football and probably Jason Wilcox, probably Omar Barada as well, and Ineos have never lied about that. They've said that that was going to be the case, and they want a similar style of play across all teams within the club, and they need a manager for the first team that can live up to that game model. Within a year and a half, we'll probably know whether he can or not. If he can't, you move him on. And the idea is, again, that with this game model, that the recruitment comes largely driven by Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, and Jason Wilcox, and maybe the German fella is at Lavelle as well. And I'm sure Amorim will have a part to play in that, but it's not like the manager, who obviously previously we've been used to having a manager who then dictates quite a bit of what goes on in terms of recruitment. And the plus side of that is that if, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if it's the football board that are picking the players and the recruitment policy and style, that means that if a manager doesn't fit for them, it's not as big a deal when that manager is surplus to requirements and needs to move on. They'll just pick someone else who they believe fits that model better. So I've got no problem at all with the 2.5-year contract, with the term head coach. I probably will refer to him as manager because just through force of habit, but the main difference I can see is what I just said, really. It's that he is there to coach the team and obviously address the press and some of the other things that managers have done for years. But in terms of Ferguson was the archetypal manager of the football club, this is a bit different. And on coaching, I want to see the team clearly coached to a philosophy and a style, because this at the moment looks like a very, very poorly coached team. I've mentioned a few times this week that I think the players at United, some of them are not good enough, but we also have to bear in mind that it's the manager's job to get the best out of the players that are there. And I would argue that if you had Pep Guardiola, not at United, but if you sent some of our players over to Pep Guardiola for a year, would he coach them to be better players than what they're showing at United? Yep, definitely. I think he would. Now, granted, the culture is different at City, but I think the manager also plays a big part, certainly on the first team culture as well. So I want to see Amorim come in and coach a very clear, specific style. I think with Ten Hag, what we've seen is there's tactics. You can loosely see what the tactics are, but it looks like he picks 11 players that he thinks obviously going to do the best on the day. He's obviously gone through tactics with them, but in terms of coaching them to do what he wants them to do, it looks non-existent. It doesn't look like they've been coached at all, and I think that's a long-standing problem at United. I don't feel like I've seen a team with a well-coached philosophy probably since Van Gaal, and I couldn't stand Van Gaal's football. It was mind-numbingly boring, but that's a personal preference of mine. I didn't like it at all. But what you would have to say about him is he coached his style into the players, and the players delivered on his style, and it was very definable. I've not seen it since. And Ten Hag came in with the reputation of being a feet on the grass manager. You know, he would be there. He'd be running sessions. He'd be coaching the players. He'd have a whistle in his mouth. He'd be really hands on. That's what he was at Ajax. And I don't know if I don't know what happened, because to me, either he was coaching and they weren't listening and they weren't doing what he asked them to do, so in which case that's a presence and personality problem, or he just wasn't coaching them. And I want to see Amorim come in and showcase his talent as a coach, because at Sporting Lisbon, from what we know, he's a very, very good coach. More on Ten Hag later. All the best. Rubin's Reds. Another thing that I think the club are trying to move forward with is, and I'm going to come back to the game model, is like the DNA of what they want to try and set as the DNA. Now, we all talk, don't we, about the United way. What's the United way to me? It's about playing attacking football, attractive football, front foot, brave, take risks, never give in, always keep going right into the end, promote young players. That's it really, I would say, for me, in terms of the United way. That's what it means to me. And I think the system, be it 4-4-2 or 3-4-3 or 4-2-3-1, God forbid, because I'm fed up to the back teeth of it. But whatever the system is that creates the United way, I'm not really bothered what it is, as long as there is a system that can create that. And I think this game model is supposed to be that, as I said before, there's principles that run throughout the whole club, and I hope those principles, and I used the word standards the other day, are those things: attacking football, attractive football, a clear, definitive style of play, where you go for it, you go for the jugular, late goals, excitement, young players, etc. And that needs to run throughout the whole club. And that game model, hopefully, is that perhaps looks at the nooks and crannies of that, as in like the nuts and bolts of it, the more systematic part of it. And if we're going to a 3-4-3, I'm golden. I want to see something that excites me and that makes me think I can get on board with this. What that is, what system that is, I don't really care. I just want something that I can see is definable, and hopefully that can achieve the United way or the DNA. So I quite like the game model because it gives a clearly definable objective for everybody. And if a manager then doesn't live up to that, like I say, you find another manager who hopefully does. The problem we might have with this game model is that EtH's are the ones that are setting it. What if they set the wrong one? What happens then? Because you can keep falling back on this game model and go, well, it's not, you're not living up to the game model, so therefore we need to get rid of that player, or we need to get rid of that manager, or that coach doesn't fit into it, or whatever. But what if they're not the problem and the game model is? They still get to run the club, don't they? Who's going to sack them? So that's a risk we're going to have to take, because the truth is we don't know yet, do we? We're not sure whether that will be the case or not. So the structure now, the EtH's structure, is pretty much set. We've got Sir Jim probably right at the top, Brailsford, Jean-Claude Blanc, Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox, Lavelle, and now Rúben Amorim. So that they're all EtH's guys. They're all appointments made by EtH, and the manager was that missing piece of the jigsaw, big piece, or head coach, whatever. So it's set now, which is exciting. It means that we can get started not just with another new manager that might start another cycle as people are worried about, more that this whole game model thing now can start, because it was never going to work under Ten Hag, because he was only ever going to try and play I was going to say his way, but I don't know what his way is, but he was only going to try and do it his way. I think that was clear. My success criteria for this season in the short term excuse me, went down the wrong hole. If he gets top 6 and we win a trophy, I think we've swum the channel from where we are now. And I don't think that's wildly optimistic. I think that is possible, but it's possible whilst also being really impressive if he can do that in the short term. More than that, I'm more concerned about him establishing his way of doing things. If he can come in and establish this 3-4-3 system, play attacking football that's attractive to watch, and we press high and we have a high energy and everyone seems to buy into it, and we don't win a trophy and we fall just short of top 6, it's not the end of the world as long as you can see that you're moving towards something. He's going to get a lot of forgiveness because he's walked into a situation where the first couple of months of the season have been awful and we're in a really difficult position. So he's coming into the rescue this season, really. But I think bigger than that and more important than that is we now need to see progress towards something quite specific, and that's exciting. And hopefully he'll be able to do that. In terms of beyond this season, I go back to the stages I've spoken about quite a bit. And stage 1, which I think we're just going into now that we've appointed the new head coach. Stage 1 is you try and rid yourself of the culture that's been so problematic. You establish this game model, you establish a clear way of doing things, you establish an identity and a definable way of playing, and you start to see improvements where hopefully the team moves towards the objectives of the club and the new DNA, or whatever you want to call it, moving towards what will be the United way. That's stage 1, and I think realistically, if the right decisions are made, that can be done in probably 2 years. Beyond that, 2 to 4 years, it needs to be, we have an absolutely cast iron identity where you know what to expect from the team, no matter who the manager is. You know what to expect from the team. We play attractive, fast-paced football. There's a great understanding. We have, if one player comes in, the players that come in all have to fit it. If they don't fit it, we have other players in mind that can come in and replace them. We're winning more games than we're not. We're finishing perhaps top 3 or 4, winning trophies, hopefully. That's stage 2. So that could be 2 to 4 years. Stage 3, which at the moment, I'm very sceptical that we're ever going to get to, is that we start winning Premier Leagues again, and that we do well in Europe. I guess a little bit like Klopp's Liverpool. Latter stages of Champions Leagues, winning the Champions League, winning the Premier League. I know they only did it once, so we need to do more than that. But that's what I think stage 3 looks like. So how far along would Amorim get on that? How many stages will he last for? I think he certainly should be okay to be stage 1 and possibly stage 2 or part of stage 2. I don't think anyone, unless they're a genius, as I mentioned before, is going to be winning Premier League titles with United without wanting to be negative. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I've got here his first 11 games. You'll forgive me for looking down because I certainly can't remember all of them. So Ipswich away, Bodo Glimt, if I've said that right, at home, Everton at home. So first 3 games, hopefully we'll do well in those first 3 games. Arsenal away, Forest at home, Victoria Pleasant. I apologise if I got that wrong. Away, City away, Spurs in the Carabao Cup quarter-final away. So tough games there. And then the Christmas fixtures are Bournemouth at home, Wolves away, and Newcastle at home. So there's 11 games until the new year. The first game in the new year as it stands is on the 5th of January, Liverpool away. But up to New Year, we've got 11 games. We should know a lot more then. We should have some understanding of what Amorim's trying to do, and certainly he will have a good understanding then of the challenge in front of him with this current set of players. Can they play the way that he wants to play? There's a lot of people that think no. There's a lot of people that think yes. Your 3 at the back speaks for itself. Martinez, De Ligt, and Yoro, when Yoro's fit. And there's obviously Lindelof, Maguire, and Evans are the three stooges. Not actually, Evans doesn't deserve that. But you've got those other 3 that could fit in, I suppose. I think probably if he's ever fit, you could probably put Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre back. You could probably put Mazraoui as a right-sided centre back of a 3. I mean, so defensively, I think we're all right. The midfielders, I think they all kind of can do the job that would be expected in a 3-4-3 system. The wide players, he tends to have wingers rather than fullbacks, which is really exciting. I think Dalot could probably do that because he is almost a bit more like a winger than an orthodox fullback anyway. Garnacho would get up and down. Rashford couldn't do that. I think Rashford would have to be one of the 2 inside forwards in behind the striker if he was going to play, and I assume Bruno would be as well. And then obviously we've got Højlund, who is not dissimilar to the striker that plays at Sporting Lisbon now. So on the face of it, we've got players to do it, but it's whether they apply what he's asking them to do, because it's not just the system; it's the way it's played, and it's the way he wants the team to press, the way he wants the team to does he want them to be patient on the ball? Does he want them to be fast-paced? How does he want them to use the ball? Have we got players to do that? We've got players who can slot into the positions, but whether they can do more than that is anybody's guess at the moment. Exciting times, though. So on to the Chelsea preview. It's anybody's guess. It's the short of it. Geez, I honestly don't know what's going to happen at the weekend. It depends on how much of a buy-in Ruud's got from the players. First off, I've enjoyed sort of watching Ruud in the press conference and on the touchline, and in the press conference in the build-up to the Chelsea game, he mentioned that he had the players in the dressing room before the game against Leicester, and he was impressing upon them just what it means to be at this club and to represent those fans. And if thinking about United's DNA, Ruud is a huge advocate for United's DNA, and you'd think it was set in stone that players would be able to, well, they'd know that stuff, but maybe not. But I like that he's Ruud. He's a hero of mine. As I mentioned before, I did a video a while ago where I did my top 10 favourite players, not necessarily the best players to play for United, and it speaks volumes as to how much I love Ruud van Nistelrooy, and that he was third, and the only 2 above him were Cantona and Keane. Bear in mind, when I first started watching United, I was watching Robson and Hughes, and Ruud's just up there in my affections. So that's been nice as a brief thing. But it's hard to predict what's going to happen at the weekend. It's a free hit. I think the season starts on the 11th of November, really. That's what it feels like when Amorim comes in. Chelsea aren't great. I think you'll have a lot of people will have you believe at the moment that Chelsea are some kind of like reborn club. The manager's come in and done pretty well. They're doing all right, but they're not brilliant. We can get at them, and I think if we if we defend half decent, don't make any silly mistakes, and have some courage and aggression to go and try and attack, I think we can win the game. It's more than a winnable game, but it's also a really losable game. So it's very difficult to call. As I said, it depends on Ruud's influence. How much of an impression has he made on the players, I suppose. Right. Let's move on to the overview. That was very brief, wasn't it, of the preview. Let's look at my overview, my analysis of Erik ten Hag. When it was announced that he was coming in, which was in April 2022, April 2022, it was announced that he was coming in the summer. I was cautiously optimistic. I still want, it was between him and Pochettino. I wanted Pochettino. Pochettino was like an itch I needed to scratch. I'd wanted him for ages, and at that point his star was falling a little bit, but I would always point to the fact that he got Tottenham to a Champions League final. What have Tottenham ever done before or since then in the Premier League era? I know Harry Redknapp did all right with them, but I think his achievements at Tottenham were massively underrated. I think he was incredible there, and I wanted him anyway. I was a bit put off with Ten Hag because there was a story doing the rounds that Spurs interviewed him and were a bit unimpressed with his charisma or lack of charisma, and I think that definitely came to fruition, because if you look at him in the media, if you look at his presence, if you look at his command of English, probably was a bit of a problem. He didn't have that aura about him that made him look like a particularly authoritative, confident Manchester United manager. One of my first impressions of him was after we got beat by Brentford. I think they ran either 10 kilometres or 13 kilometres more than us, and the next day he got the players in and got them to run the 10 or 13 kilometres, and he ran it with them. I really liked that. I thought that's Jesus, firework, hopefully. It sets a tone. I talk about standards, don't I? And I think it does. It sets those standards. But I think over a period of time, I don't know if he doubled down on that kind of style of management, or whether he moved away from it. We'll never know, will we? But whatever he was doing in the background either stopped working because it was overkill with doing it that way, or maybe he softened too much. I don't know. We'll never know. But one thing's for sure: his message probably needed a bit of variation, and it didn't work. I gave a quick overview the other day. I think his first season was very good, but it was doing the things that we didn't do so well under Ollie better. It wasn't his style of play. There was a big kick on when the Glazers announced that potentially they were going to leave the club. We won a trophy. We finished third. Rashford obviously got on a hot streak. And we got to the FA Cup final. No mean feat. It was decent. The summer after that, signing Mason Mount is one of the weirdest signings, and I've thought it from the minute he did it. It was really odd. Onana, you bring him in because he's a ball-playing goalkeeper, but then you don't have the players around him that suit him. Maybe that's not all on Ten Hag, but still, the drop-off was unreal. I have to say, and I have to take ownership of this because I said it on here. It's there somewhere in the annals of my videos. In the summer, in between his first and second season, United were messing up the Greenwood situation, and I did a video and I said the only leader at that club is Ten Hag. The only one that shows any leadership style is him. At the time, Richard Arnold was putting fishing exercises out as to what to do with Mason Greenwood. It was an absolute disgrace in the way that they did it. And I said Ten Hag's the only leader in that football club, because at the time, in that first season, he had showed quite a lot of leadership, and he'd been quite ballsy, and he'd been quite... I suppose I used the word authoritative before in saying that he hadn't been, but I think he had actually. I think he had a bit of authority about him. Command of English maybe contradicted that a little bit, but yeah, he probably did have a bit of authority about him, and he had a lot of credit in the bank. So I can't say that from really really early on I thought he was crap, because I didn't. And there were mitigating circumstances as to why he struggled, in that the club went and bought Anthony for stupid money, which he wouldn't have sanctioned. He sanctioned the move, but I'm sure he said, go and spend whatever you need to get Anthony. I'm sure he didn't do that. And there was, listen, the Glazers are a bunch of idiots. So they ran the ship for the first half of the time that he was here. And I don't think that did him any favours. But nonetheless, you have to look at the statistics from last season. I mean, like, you look at how many times we've conceded 3 goals or more, the European record, the amount of leads we gave away, the last 13 games of last season and the first however many games of this season, like the points we've got from those from that chunk of games, it's absolutely shocking. Whether you've got injuries or not, it's appalling, and you can't survive that, and you shouldn't have survived it. And again, I'll repeat, they look like a team that's not coached. Anthony's a prime example. Anthony is somebody that Ten Hag knew from Ajax, and I think obviously clearly wanted at United. He comes in, he starts all right. We can all see that every time he gets the ball, he's going to cut in on his left foot and shoot. And I'm thinking, you know him, so coach him. And if he's not coachable, why? If he's like thinking, whatever, I'm not listening to you, you shouldn't have bought him. You must have thought he was an all right lad, otherwise you wouldn't have bought him. So, just Anthony's the prime example of it. Just coach the lad. But the whole team looks poorly coached, as I said. A really underwhelming year and a half, I'd say. Let's look at highlights and lowlights. Highlights: FA Cup final, without a doubt. When we won against City, it was a brilliant day. A day I'll never forget as a United fan. A day of joy. It wasn't just a smash and grab. We played superbly well. I thought his game plan was absolutely spot on. It was mint. And shoving it in their faces was just sweet, especially when you got neighbours that are City fans, as I have over there. And Take Me Home United Road was blasting out the back of my garden that evening. It was wonderful. Great memory. And he should have gone off into the sunset after that. The low point, this is ironic, the low point was the Coventry semi-final, which we won. But it was embarrassing. It was the moment I knew he was the wrong person to take United forward from that point. I knew he needed to be there for the FA Cup final because he's got us there. He deserved the chance to go and try and win it, and obviously he did. But to be 3-0 up against a championship team, there's 20 minutes to go in an FA Cup semi-final, and at that point you've done everything right. The game was going to plan. The game was going swimmingly. Maybe to 65 minutes. And then they made 2 subs, we made 2 subs, and all of a sudden they are all over us. And I think they scored 3 goals in the last 15 minutes. But it was coming. You could see they were starting to edge into the game for 10 minutes. They were just playing a straight ball every single time. It was cutting through us. He didn't know what to do to stop it. They started to get a lot of momentum. And for a championship team, 3-0 down at Wembley, big pitch, big occasion, against Manchester United, and they come back and draw 3-3 to take it to extra time, is an absolute disgrace. And they bossed us in extra time, and they had a goal chalked off right at the end, which they should have scored, and we won on penalties. I have never been so lacking in animation after a semi-final win on penalties, or a penalty win in general, than that game. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to win the game. I wouldn't have been asked if we'd have gone out, because I think Coventry thoroughly deserved to win that game. It was an absolute joke, and at that point, I was like, I'm done. He's not going to take United forward. So how crazy is that? The low point was the semi-final that got us to the final, that then was the high point for me. But his tactical inflexibility, which was showcased in that Coventry game, his tactical inflexibility, his constant excuses, his making injuries as an excuse, this fallacy that he promoted young players. He didn't. He promoted Mainu and Garnacho, who anyone worth their salt would promote because they're 2 phenomenally talented young players. and saved the club loads and loads of money and playing positions that we need players in. But last season, time after time, players continually let us down, saying the same old shit all the time, seeing the same old shit all the time, and he didn't change it, and didn't bring young players in, which all United fans would have wanted him to do. So it's and the statistics, as I say, it was a perfect storm. It wasn't good enough. The thing that alarms me slightly with the Amorim thing is that Ten Hag had such a good reputation coming in as a real hands-on coach, as I said. A glowing report from anyone who knew anything about him. But I'm hoping with this game model and perhaps this is a very strategic appointment with Amorim, I hope anyway, that it might be different. Jim Ratcliffe said, and it was everyone's tagline, we don't want to run to bad decisions, we want to walk to good ones. They were sleepwalking into mediocrity with Ten Hag. They took too long. There's running to decisions and then there's procrastinating, and it's wasted the first 2 months of our season. It was a poor decision to keep him on, and I still have massive question marks as to why that happened really. But it's a fresh start, and it's not just a fresh start with a new manager. It's a fresh start with a new model, a new whole club model, and that I'm as excited about that. And now that the full structure is in place with the manager completing that, I'm as excited about all of that as I am the fact that it's Rúben Amorim. Going back to the stages I always talk about, this feels like finally on the 11th of November we'll be going into stage 1. 4 months too late probably. Should have been at the end of last season. We should be in that stage 1 now. I've said before, we're in the hangover stage. We haven't even started. It's the prequel, but we're going from the hangover to stage 1, and I'm excited to see where it takes us. So, I said it might be a longer one tonight. I've enjoyed that. I hope you have too. If you want me to cover anything else, leave a comment. Do you know what I should say? I never really go overboard on this because I'm not a salesman, which is probably why the channel has remained so small. I've noticed that when people like and comment, the views of those videos seem to rocket up, not to ridiculous heights, but I don't know how YouTube works. I never really looked into it, so I'm assuming that if you like and comment, it raises the profile of the video. So if you're a regular watcher, and even if you think that was all right and he's not talking absolute shit, if you can put a like and even just a quick comment, it would make a massive difference. So I don't normally say that, but it would make a difference. So if you watched, thanks for watching. Up the Rúben Reds and get them Glazers out.